Welcome to a video on solving cubic equations. So we've got two goals today. Number one, we're going to explain how solutions of an equation and the zeros of a function are related. And so remember, zeros are your x-intercepts. And then ultimately, we're going to solve cubics. And so number one, I'm going to teach you how to solve a cubic by factoring. So if you remember with quadratics, factoring was the t-chart, all that loveliness. So step number one. We're going to find our greatest common factor. So if I look at these three terms, I know a 2 can go into all of them. And then they have one x in common because I can take an x away from each of them. Once you have your greatest common factor, we're going to undistribute and take away 2x and divide it by everything by 2x. So a 2 divided by 2 is a 1. If I had 3 and I took away 1, I'm left with x squared. Moving on, a negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6. And then I need 1x because I had 2 and I took 1 away. My last one, I've got an 18 divided by 2, which is a 9. And this term does not have any variables because you had an x and you took it away. Okay? So now my problem still equals 0, and I need to solve it. Number 2, I'm going to factor again. So I've got something in parentheses that is a quadratic. So back to module 2, when you factor, we're going to do a t-chart. So I'm going to come over here. I'll go to the side. Draw my t-chart. Your A times your C goes on the left of your t-chart, and the B is on the right. So this is a nice quadratic because I have an A as a 1. 1 times a 9 is a 9. Your B term is negative 6. So I'm going to ask myself what multiplies to get 9. Only thing would be 3 times 3 or 9 times 1. Now I want to add these to get a negative 6. So this square is nowhere near a 6. But if I make these both negative and add them, that will give me a negative 6, as well as a negative times a negative is a positive. So negative 3 and negative 3 are your answers. Now, that will split up this quadratic into two parentheses. X minus 3 will go in one. X minus 3 will go in the other parenthesis. This 2x that you factored out just drops down. So you've officially factored this entire polynomial. And now we're going to solve. If we are solving, I am looking for the x-intercepts or when the problem is equal to 0. So to do that, set each parenthesis equal to a 0. This first one, I would have 2x equals 0. And if I divide by 2, 0 divided by anything is 0. So you'll remember when we did quadratics, if there is no parentheses, just a variable, it will always be 0. These two answers, you can solve it by saying x minus 3 equals 0, adding 3 to both sides to get a positive 3, or you can remember, change your sign. If it is a negative 3 in your equation, your 0 or your x-intercept will be a positive 3. This one also will be a positive 3. So I don't have 3 solutions, I just have 2 solutions, and this 3 is called a repeated solution because there was 2 of them, and that would be a bounce in our graph. But you only need to write it once. Okay? And that is how you solve by factoring. So step 1, see if there is a GCF. Step 2, see if you can factor a quadratic further. And then step 3, solve, set them equal to 0. Okay? Well, let's do another problem. All right, in this example, we're looking for the zeros, so not technically solving, but we are. I'm just trying to find the x-intercepts. So notice this equation does not have an equal 0, but I am ultimately trying to figure out where these zeros are. So if I want, I can write 2x cubed plus 16x squared plus 32x and I am trying to see when it equals 0. I am trying to find the zeros and solve, as well as sketch graph. So number 1, let's find out if there is a GCF. The leading coefficient is a 2. 2 goes into 32 and 16. And then they each have an x in common. So I'm going to take out a 2x for my entire problem. I'll be left with an x squared plus 8x, and then half of 32 would be 16. So I am dividing everything up here by a 2 and then taking an x away to get your middle parenthesis. Now, this is a quadratic. It is a trinomial, and I need to factor it further. So I'm going to do my t-chart. Let's break it down over here to the side. Again, a times c is on the left. 1 times 16 is a 16. B term is an 8. So what multiplies to get 16, but will add to get you an 8? 1 times 16 is not close to an 8. 2 times 8, also not close to an 8. 4 times 4. 4 times 4 works out because 4 plus 4 is an 8. Okay, so once you find your factors, this quadratic will split up into 2 parentheses and put your factors in them. So x plus 4, and then bring down our last factor of a 2x. So I've completely factored my cubic. Now I need to solve it. So I'm going to set each one equal to 0. The first answer will be 0, because if I divide by 2, 0 divided by 2 would be a 0. If I switch my signs, my other answer will be a -4 and a -4. Again, I don't need to repeat it, but I do know this is going to be a bounce because I've got x plus 4 squared. Okay, so my last question wants me to sketch a graph. So back to graphing. I'm going to cross at a 0. I'm going to bounce at a -4 because -4 repeated twice. And the y-intercept is going to be a 0 as well. So let's sketch a nice graph. This cubic is positive, so it should be going up. I'm going to cross at a 0, and then I'm going to bounce at a -4. Okay. So if this graph is increasing, I'm going to start at the bottom. I will bounce off at a -4, go back down, and then cross through your x-intercept. So not only does factoring help you find the zeros and solve it, it also helps you graph it in factored form, which is a nice little connection to our previous lesson. Let's do one more, solving by factoring. Example 3, find all the real solutions, hence, where does it equal 0, what are the x-intercepts of this cubic? Okay, so step 1 is a GCF, greatest common factor. Now there's a number 1 in front, so I know they don't have a single number in common. And then this term does not have an x, so they don't have an x in common, so there is none. I have no greatest common factor, so this one's a little bit different. I have 4 terms, and so that is when I factor by grouping. So when we factor by grouping, I'm going to split this cubic in half and just look at the first 2 and see if there is a greatest common factor. The only thing they have in common is they both have an x squared term. So I'm going to factor that out of my first 2 terms. If I take an x squared away from an x cubed, I've got an x. If I take an x squared away from an 8x squared, I'm just left with a -8. Now, if you'll remember, this parenthesis must repeat on the other side. All right, and now I'm asking what times an 11x, repeat it. Okay, now what do we notice? I can't factor it because I need an 11 here, but 11 times an 8 does not give me a 20. So guess what? We can't factor it. So here's an example of I cannot solve by factoring. I need some other method. If that happens, you are going to have to look at the graph on the calculator and find the x-intercepts, okay? A cubic can have at most 3 solutions. It could have 1 answer, it could have 2, or it could have 3, but it cannot have more than 4 because of that cubed. So let's head to our graphing calculator. All right, so I've got my graphing calculator pulled up. We're going to press y equals, and we are going to graph our cubic. So x cubed minus 8x squared plus 11x plus 20. So if you need to pause real quick so you can have a chance to type that in, go for it. Once you hit graph, all I am looking for are the x-intercepts, and I can count. 1 crosses at a -1, 1, 2, 3, 1 crosses at a 4, 1 crosses at a 5. So there are my 3 answers right there. So x would equal -1, a 4, and a 5, and I am done. So x equals -1, x equals 4, and x equals 5. Okay, so your graphing calculator can help you check your answer and figure out how to solve a cubic. You're just going to look at your x-intercepts. Okay, so if I wanted to, I could go back to my previous problems in example 1, and I can graph this in the calculator and double check that my answers are a 0 and a 3. Let's do that. I've got 2x cubed minus 12x squared plus 18x. If I graph that in the calculator, oh, that looks crazy. Oh, I messed up. Redo, if I graph it in the calculator, I will see it crossed at a 0, so that was one answer, and then it hit at a 3. Now if you'll notice, remember I got 2 positive 3 answers, and that's why it bounced at a positive 3. Okay? So if you have no idea how to do any of this, you can at least graph it in the calculator and figure out where it hits the x-axis to solve your cubic. So let me know if you have any questions. That is how you solve a cubic by factoring. You can watch part 2 to see how you do it without factoring.